Welcome! If you are serious about building a long-term career in real estate, there is one metric that you absolutely, positively have to master. It is the single best indicator of a property's financial health, and honestly, a deep understanding of it is just non-negotiable for success. So today, we're doing a masterclass on loss to lease.
So let me just ask you straight up, what is that number one indicator? If you had to pick just one single metric to take a property's temperature, what would you choose? It's not NOI, it's not occupancy, it's loss to lease.
All right, so let's break this down. Loss to lease, or LTL for short, is really just the gap between your potential and your reality. It's the difference between the market rent you could be getting today and the in-place rent you're actually collecting from the tenants you have right now. This gap, it exists on pretty much every property, and your entire job really is to manage it.
So here's how we're going to tackle this so you can achieve that mastery. We've broken it into 5 clear sections. We'll kick things off with the absolute foundation, the 3 types of rent. Then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of calculating the LTL gap. After that, we'll play doctor and diagnose a healthy LTL from an unhealthy one. From there, we'll dive into the major red flags to watch out for, and we'll wrap up by giving you the exact questions you need to be asking.
Okay, section 1. Let's build that foundation. Because you see, before we can even really talk about the gap, we've got to understand what's creating it in the first place. And it all boils down to 3 different types of rent that stack up in a very clear hierarchy. Getting this part right is absolutely fundamental.
So, sitting right at the very top of that pyramid is market rent. You might also hear it called street rent. Think of it as your sticker price. It's what you'd charge a brand new tenant if they walked in off the street today. Now listen, this is key. This number should never be static. If you see market rents that haven't budged in 6 months, that's a huge red flag all by itself. This number should be constantly moving with the market, with demand, with your competition.
Okay, so the next step down in the hierarchy is lease rent, or in-place rent. This one's simple. It's what your current tenant is actually paying, what's written on their signed lease. And because leases are, locked in for a year or whatever the term is, this number is always going to lag behind a moving market. So if market rents went up since they signed, boom, right there, a gap is automatically created. That is where your loss to lease is born.
And this table here, it just lays out the full picture perfectly. You've got market rent way up top. That's your highest dream scenario number. Then in the middle is lease rent. That's the reality on paper. But then right at the bottom is effective rent, and this is the one that really shows you the cash, because it's what the tenant truly pays after you factor in goodies like 1 month free. That special offer has to come from somewhere, right? And it brings the actual cash you collect down even further.
So now that we've got that rent hierarchy down cold, we can get practical. Let's move into section 2. How do we actually calculate this LTL gap? Well, it turns out there are basically 3 ways to go about it, ranging from a super detailed unit-by-unit look to a quick, high-level glance.
First, there's the most nitty-gritty way. You pull up the rent roll and you do the math for every single unit. Second, you can zoom out and take that higher-level view from the financial statements, just comparing your gross potential rent to what you actually collected. But honestly, the best way, the most accurate way, that's the third one, using your lease trade-out reports. Why? Because it's based on what's actually happening, on real signed deals, not just theoretical numbers on a spreadsheet.
Okay, for section 3, let's go from calculation to diagnosis. You've got the number. So what? What does it actually mean? Because here's the thing. Having a loss to lease isn't inherently good or bad. It's the size of the number, and more importantly, which way it's trending, that tells you if your property is healthy or showing signs of a serious illness. A healthy property looks something like this. The market rent line is climbing steadily up, and right behind it, your actual in-place rent is chasing it, closing that distance with every renewal and every new lease. We call this burning off your loss to lease, and it is exactly what you want to see. The gap is there, sure, but you're controlling it. It's stable, or even better, it's shrinking.
But an unhealthy property? Well, that's a completely different story. You might see market rents taking off into the stratosphere, but your in-place rents are just flatlining. Maybe the renewal strategy is weak. Maybe you just can't get those asking rents on new leases. Whatever the reason, that gap is widening, and it's dangerous. You're falling further and further behind the market, and you are literally leaving money on the table every single month.
Let's put some hard numbers to this, okay? A healthy LTL is usually going to be less than 10% of your gross potential rent, and the trend is your friend. It's going down. And here's a pro tip. Your rent growth on new leases should be way higher than on your renewals. Unhealthy? That's when you're creeping up past 15%, the gap is getting worse, and you're barely getting any bump in rent when a unit turns over. That is a huge warning sign. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, where we talk about the critical red flags. And we've got to start with the single biggest, baddest warning sign you can possibly find. It's a weird-sounding concept, I know, but it's called gain to lease. And if you see this on a report, alarm bells should be screaming in your head.
So what is gain to lease? Well, it's basically a loss to lease in reverse. It means your current tenants, the people already living there, are paying more than what you're charging brand new tenants today. Just let that sink in for a second. The people who are already there are paying more than the fresh faces walking in the door. This means that as every single lease expires, your revenue is guaranteed to go down. As one asset manager, a guy named Darius, put it when he saw this on a report, "That's a bad sign. Our revenue is going to be trending downwards for a while. There's no ambiguity, there's no way to spin it. It is a clear, unmistakable warning that your income stream is about to shrink. It means either the market is softened or you've made a really big pricing mistake." Now, gain to lease is an honest red flag in a way. The market is telling you something's wrong. But the second type of red flag is much more subtle. It's about how the numbers can be intentionally manipulated to hide bad performance. You see, LTL isn't just a number, it's a story, and you need to learn how to spot when that story is pure fiction. Take this real-world example. A property's budgeted loss to lease suddenly got worse by over $85,000 in a single year. And this was while the property manager was bragging about 6.8% rent growth. So how on earth does that happen? Well, it happens through some specific, pretty deceptive tactics.
Here are the top 3 tricks people use. Tactic 1. They just inflate the market rents. They'll set an unachievable rent of, say, $2,500 when they know the real market is closer to $2,200. The potential revenue looks great on paper, but that massive LTL gap gets hidden. Tactic 2 is just pure laziness. They don't update market rents for months, which makes the LTL look artificially small. And Tactic 3, the classic, concession abuse. They keep that high market rent on paper, but they're giving away 2 months free just to get anyone to sign a lease, which hides the true, lower rent.
This chart right here shows that first tactic perfectly. Your property manager is claiming the market rent is $2,500, but a quick look at the actual competition shows they're all charging around $2,200. If your market rent is 10 to 15% above the real market, it's not a market rent. It's a fantasy. So, for our final section, let's build your toolkit. How do you protect yourself and your assets from all of this? It all comes down to asking the right questions. These are the sharp, expert-level questions that cut right through the noise and get you to the truth.
So start with this one. You ask, what is our LTL as a percentage of GPR? And what was the actual percentage last year? This simple question is a killer. It does 2 things. It tells you the current size of the problem, and more importantly, it immediately reveals the trend. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? And don't let them compare this year's budget to last year's budget. Insist on comparing it to last year's actuals. Ready for the next level? Here's the advanced and really powerful question. You ask them, walk me through the lease trade-out report. What are our actual blended rent growth numbers, and why do they differ from what the budget projected? You see, that report is where reality lives. It shows actual transactions. So if the budget is claiming 7% rent growth, but the trade-out report shows a blended growth of only 4%, you've found the gap. You've caught them. And you can ask them exactly where that other 3% is. I'll bet you the answer is almost always loss to lease. So we'll end with this. Loss to lease is never, ever just a line item on a spreadsheet. It tells a story. It tells a dynamic story about your property's health, your team's performance, and your future revenue. So the only question is the story it's telling a success story of capturing market growth, or is it hiding a big problem that's being swept under the rug? Now you have the tools to find out.